Okay. All righty. Well, thank you everybody for joining us tonight. Thank you for taking the time to watch this or listen to this. My name is Alec White, and this is my project assignment for EDAC 631 Adult and Community Education. I'm going to be talking with a great group of individuals tonight. We're going to be discussing aspects of the COVID-19 pandemic and specifically kind of more talking about the aspects of food during that time. As far as the kind of historical aspects that we're going to be talking about tonight, these will be presented in the lens of the historical aspects that COVID-19 pandemic will bring, even though it's in a contemporary phase. We're still very much enthralled by some of the precautions and some of the um, adaptations that we've had to do with our own lives currently. So very much aware of that, but I'll go ahead and start us off with some introductions. I would love to introduce this lovely group and get their perspectives tonight. So we'll go ahead and start with Tiffany. Would you mind introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your background?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Tiffany Hawk. I'm an administrative assistant at Drake University. Um, I live in Iowa, Des Moines, Iowa, with my husband and our three pets. My education background is in theater for my undergraduate degree. I am currently going through a master's program for higher education in college student services.
Thank you very much. And yes, full foreclosure for the group aspect tonight. Tiffany is my wife. My brother is joining us, and my coworker in peer Melinda is also joining us tonight. So just so everybody knows the connection there. But Joseph, would you mind introducing yourself and telling us a little
Hi,
bit about your background?
sure. My name is Joseph White. I live in Chicago. I am a writer and server at a bar and restaurant, and I live with my wife and 8-year-old kid.
Very nice. Thank you. And Melinda, would you mind introducing yourself and telling us just a little bit about your background?
Sure. I'm Melinda Kirker. I also live in Des Moines, Iowa with my dog, and I have many jobs. I work at a living history museum, which I'm starting my 28th year at. I work at a medical college, which I am on year 20 something, I think, there too, possibly 13, maybe 13. Feels like a lot. Um, and I work with a high school band, and I work with music and everything at church. So I have a lot of different groups I'm involved in, plus
Uh,
other organizations I volunteer at.
Absolutely. And this was a gift for everybody's time, but especially Melinda with everything you just described. Thank you for for taking some time to maybe you can at least take a breath during this during this interview. All right, well, thanks for sharing that. We'll go ahead and I'll throw it back to you, Melinda. Thinking about all of the things that you are involved with, how did it feel when the COVID-19 pandemic first emerged? What were your initial thoughts around the recommendations for social distancing and wearing masks and everything that went along with it?
Uh, when the pandemic hit the Midwest, I actually was at a living history conference on a paddle boat for the weekend where we were holding our conference. And we got off the boat on Saturday afternoon, dressed in all of our different time periods of clothing, to have all of our cell phones blowing up and finding out that the world was shutting down. So
Mm,
it, uh, yeah, when all that happened, there was a lot going on from all aspects of everything I was involved with since I was March. Um, with my job at the university, it was trying to figure out how we were going to do our testing events and social distance and everything else and how to make everything work. And then the museum, when it opened for touring in May, trying to figure out how everything that normally is done was going to be done. With Color Guard, trying to figure out how we were going to continue meeting and doing the things that we did with that. And then, of course, with church, there was all the questions of what happens now and how do we do that. So that time frame was very confusing, very chaotic, and very tiring trying to figure out all of those different pieces and parts I'm involved in, and looking at what all the recommendations were, trying to figure out how you could incorporate those, and a lot of very long days and weeks.
Absolutely. And you bring up an aspect of, having to figure out how things are gonna continue to go on. Joe being in Chicago, being in the, uptown north side of the city, and being amongst the kind of hustle and bustle, how did you start to feel or react whenever the pandemic kind of first started?
Oh, I was terrified. I like it was a really, it all happened kind of, like all at once. And I waited tables, and my wife was a production manager in theater, and so we both kind of got the call that we were being furloughed. Like everyone was like, "Hey, just give it a couple weeks." And I think I kind of knew that it would not be a couple weeks. Like I just felt it in my bones.
Mhm.
And so like the trying to claim unemployment and all of that kind of stuff was extraordinarily stressful. So
Yeah,
um
absolutely.
yeah, so at the very beginning I was definitely stressed,
Mhm.
was the best way to put it.
And Tiffany, I know through our timeline, we were, just very recent transplants. I know from my perspective, getting the getting the call that everything was starting to shut down, in March, March of 2020 was just kind of the first time that I had truly been kind of stopped in my tracks. But you were just starting a new position with a new company. So how did all of that kind of play in with that?
Yeah, I was 6 months into working in higher education for the first time and in admissions. And I had a difficult time because my position was very, very paper heavy. So that was pretty difficult to just work from home and not be able to do my job fully. I ended up being one of the first people to go back to the office after like 3 months or so. And it was like just me, and I would go in every other day or so. Um, yeah, that and had to do just a lot of paperwork, and I was alone a lot. And but we did get to go on a lot of walks. So that was nice.
That is true. Yeah. One thing that definitely jumped out is, I guess, as far as learning a new skill, is the appreciation of of the copious amounts of walking we did, in the beginning, as it was cheap and very much socially distant from a lot of things. So, um, Joe, speaking of working in the restaurant industry, what were your kind of circles like, or members of your community, both in the arts and in food service? How are they starting to react to the news? Because you said, oh, we'll be shut down for a couple weeks, and obviously that was not the case.
Yeah, everyone kind of knew. Like, and it was, I wasn't super close with ownership or management. But everyone else was like, yep, here we go. There were lots of fun videos of people playing taps and packing their server apron. And, like, um, So things like that. But it was definitely like scary, you know, it's all of our livelihoods. So uh, one of the things that I noticed is a lot of people kind of came together to, you know, their Rick Bayless, who is a chef here in Chicago. Everyone had extra food in their restaurant, and even in Burger Bar did a similar thing. Like, hey, come and get some of this food, you know, otherwise it's gonna, you know, go bad. And so there was a lot of things like that. If you need something, there was a Facebook group, you know, like if you needed help with rent or you needed, you know, just straight up food. I mean, I remember like people being genuinely afraid that they were going to go hungry. And because we didn't have any money to buy food. And here's the thing about people in the restaurant industry, we are not the most future minded bunch. So you know, like we eat out a lot. We, you know, get a lot of our meals at work and things like that. So, you know, you come home and there's like, you know, some orange juice that expired 2 weeks ago in the fridge, and maybe like a block of cheese for some reason. You know what I mean? So there are a lot of people that were kind of in that position. So
Yeah, yikes. Yeah, very disruptive, very again, kind of having to adapt on the fly, but definitely coming together. Melinda, same question to you. How did your various communities, and you obviously are involved in a lot. How did those reactions start to come about, or what were you seeing?
Um, it was interesting all around because each of the things I'm involved with are very much people oriented, but also different in how you can do things and viewpoints of things. So, for example, color guard, I think while we had a short break there, we started being able to figure out how to do practices outdoors because the weather was warming up. So we were able to still have people meet outside, spaced apart, to be able to do our color guard stuff. Um, Church figured out how to do Facebook Live, and I would go over to the pastor's house. So it was him and his wife and his daughter, and I doing the services so that everyone else could be at home. Um, and then for the museum, once we got to May and the museum was opening, it was very different because there you did a lot of cooking demonstrations at some of the areas, and so we couldn't do any of that sort of stuff that year. We did wear masks, and that first year they had visitors wear masks as well that were coming through, and tried to block off different areas of some of the buildings and stuff so that people could only come in so far, and then cleaning surfaces a lot.
Mhm.
For the medical college, it was trying to figure out Zoom and how to take every piece of testing that we do online. And so that was a lot of hours of trying to do that and trying to make it all work. Um, Trying to train people how to use Zoom. And like Tiffany, partway in, it was decided by people higher up that oversaw our department that at least one person had to be on campus every week. So we were assigned a week that was ours to be there. So yeah, I know that feeling of being the only person in the entire building because the other departments in our building didn't have that. It was just our department. So yeah, you're sitting there and cafeteria's closed and everything else is closed, and it's just you in a big silent building. Um, so it with that one, we definitely were not meeting in person. And then once we got to the point where we're starting to bring people back, it was a lot of everybody was in masks plus face shields. You had to be in both, and lots of cleaning and figuring out how to change things up so that you had the time, because at that point it was okay, and then once you clean, it has to sit for this many minutes. And so it was hard to do that, plus with very limited people who were willing to come in to be in person. It was burning a lot of people out too, trying to do it. So
Absolutely, yeah. Tiffany and Melinda both working in higher education, specifically in training medical professionals. Tiffany, did you notice the adaptations that your kind of circles and communities had to make, specifically to again just keep things rolling as far as training of students and getting that ready to go?
Um, I came into working at DMU a little bit later, so it didn't affect me as much. But in admissions, I personally, for the 6 months prior to the beginning of the pandemic, I had been pushing for an electronic transcript system so
Mhm.
that we could just download the transcripts and I could enter them and call it good. That did not happen, much to my chagrin. There it was a lot slower than I would have liked. There were baby steps that were taken, but it ended up being more work for myself and a handful of other people in the office than it should have been. Although we got very, very good at Teams, Microsoft Teams, and we had kind of near the beginning of the pandemic, we had some good community building with work, with our departments, of like having a trivia day or having a step challenge, seeing who could get the most steps. And um, so there were some moments that were really, really good for technology and integration. I also worked with a very small generational gap of people. Everyone who I worked with were pretty much the same age,
Mhm.
uh, with a few exceptions. So it was really easy to do some of the technological changes. But others, it was really hard and it didn't end up working.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, definitely. Again, you highlight a lot of the efforts that we all had to kind of take to adapt on the fly. But one thing that really, I guess, kept us all connected is the need and want and desire to eat. So we'll kind of use that to pivot to some more food related aspects of the discussion tonight. Um, Starting off with thinking about as we as we started to kind of gain our footing a little bit and think about our social distancing and mask and precautions. How did that start to impact your daily life surrounding food, especially thinking about our creature comforts of wanting to go out and get these certain food items versus kind of staying home and being forced to eat what you got and thinking about when you're going to get to the grocery store next. Joe, how did that start to come about?
You learn to work with what you have. Like I definitely learned how to make a lot more things from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed cooking before, so it wasn't like an enormous like, oh God, I gotta figure out how bread works or whatever. But I definitely like, we would do like a grocery shop like really early in the morning, like once every other week. And so you just end up getting a lot of like uh random ingredients. Also, I mentioned earlier that like we would get the like, we got a box from we called it the Bayless box, and it had like 5 pounds of rice and 5 pounds of pinto beans, and and so like we would you just like, I guess we're making pinto beans today, or I guess for like we definitely we had to be less picky, with what we were going to eat. But I think that part of it ended up working out a lot better. Also, YouTube tutorials were really handy too. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
Tiff, I know that with our diet, you were very much a big proponent of as much fresh produce as possible. And I know that really helped us out as much as it could, just since we weren't as active as possible, getting that fresh fruit and vegetables. But do you remember thinking about, wanting to secure that, or how food was going to be handled for us?
Well, you're the chef in the household, so I pretty much just went along with whatever you made. Although we always had mac and cheese. That's my thing, is we always had macaroni and cheese. But when it comes to yes, I am a very big proponent of fresh fruits and vegetables. And it was honestly, now I can't remember. It's like I blocked it out of my brain, but we did also get up really early to go to the grocery store as quickly as possible, just to get all of the things. And we ended up getting a lot of the same things.
Mhm.
And it was fine. We ended up learning how to make different things. Like just today, we made zucchini donuts and they were delicious. So that's kind of a remnant, a leftover of learning how to use the fresh fruits and vegetables in our cooking.
Absolutely. Yeah. Melinda, with your historical background, was it nice to kind of see some of the reemergence of the, baking of fresh breads, or the canning and preserving of things? And I didn't see too many people tanning mini hides, but I also know that you know that skill as well. So
Yes. Um, it's always interesting to see the what's old is new again happens. And yes, in the pandemic, it very much was making me smile watching all the people who are like, "Oh, it's really fun to," and yeah, that's something that used to be normal. Um, and at the same time, it made me very jealous because with the way my schedule was, especially for the full-time job with the medical clinic or medical school, um, I had even less time than what I had had pre-pandemic. And I didn't have time to play and to do all that stuff that would have been fun. Um, so my like you said, Tiffany, my diet, I tried to keep it healthy, and actually I found myself being healthier even mentally and physically and everything than when I wasn't working from home. And because I was very busy from the time I got up in the morning until in the evening, I was going to the grocery store later at night. So again, when not a lot of people were there, um, and getting what I could for sure. Um, I think really it was easier to get some foods than other foods, and it would just depend on the week as to what was easier or harder. But I did find myself eating a lot of the same things basically because a lot of it I was trying to go for what was easy and fast, but still healthy
Mhm.
because of timing of everything that I was doing.
You're right.
But I did make some fresh breads on occasions because I have always enjoyed doing them.
Oh yeah, I think we all discovered our favorite, banana bread recipe that we'll, now claim for the rest of our lives and into many generations. But we're, I guess, a little too proud to admit we got it from like binging with Babish or something. But thinking along those lines, I mean, yeah, social media, huge influencers, since it really allowed us to stay connected, and share these recipes. Streaming services, obviously, uh, bringing out a lot of those cooking competitions. Great British Baking Show obviously held a pretty high regard in our household. Tiffany, can you think of any, even as we've sent each other cooking videos today, can you think of any memorable new like cooking skills or new recipes that really that were, you know, memorable, that influenced you in the beginning of the pandemic?
Um, not well, I made banana bread a lot.
Yes.
Because we would end up getting a lot of bananas and we would get sick of them and we would stop eating them. And so they'd just turn brown. I'm like, well, perfect. I'll just make banana bread. Because I remember my mom always had brown bananas in the freezer, but she never did anything with them. So I'm like, mom was supposed to make banana bread, so I'm going to make banana bread. And I ended up just finding a recipe that was really simple and adding to it.
Mhm.
So one day I would try honey, the next week I would try maple syrup, I would add dried fruits, or I would add nuts, and it would end up just being like an amalgamation. One time I remember asking my bus driver, "Are you allergic to anything?" And he's just like, "No." And the next day I brought him a couple slices of banana bread that had like pistachio and chocolate chips and dried apricots and XYZ, all of it in banana bread. So I think that was the one thing that I recall, which we should probably make some banana bread soon.
Joe, like you said, you've always enjoyed cooking. Was it fun to discover new recipes, or to even just kind of hone in on more of your own basic skills to use?
Yeah, I got really into like super, I call it like really basic stuff. Like I got into like fermenting and pickling and uh like I learned how to make tortillas and you know like that kind of stuff. And so we would do like Taco Tuesday every week and we would like go a little crazy. You know, we'd do like I'd make fresh salsas and pickled red onions and you know all sorts of things like that. So I got really into that kind of stuff. But the place, my apartment is small, which is probably a good thing. Otherwise, there'd be like you know cheese aging in the basement or something ridiculous. You know, like um, my wife got really into making kombucha, and so she would do like she made her own you know, kombucha starter, whatever it's called. What do they call those? I don't know.
Scobies,
Yeah, it
Scoobies.
looks like a booger. And so they, yeah, and so we were like really into that kind of thing. And I tried and failed to do a sourdough starter. It never took. I don't know what I did wrong, but that's okay because I feel like the amount of bread I make does not necessitate having to feed a sourdough starter every day. So like,
Yeah.
so
Oh, very nice. And Melinda, any memorable recipes that you resurrected, or that you just kind of maybe pridefully were like, you know, you people are out there scrounging for butter, and I can make it fresh with three ingredients.
Well, I don't have a cow, so yeah, can't quite make it fresh. But I am laughing at the other two because Tiff in high school for our speech class we had to do a demonstration speech and I did one pan banana bread, brought in all the ingredients because yeah, we always made banana bread from those. So you know, I do have an easy recipe and um I'll also nodding along with your brother there because yeah, I've killed off many a sourdough starter in my life, and I have more recently learned some tips for sourdough, so I'm going to try it again. And I do have a lot of great recipes that do use a sourdough starter, but you can store it in the fridge, so you don't have to feed it every single day. Is what I've learned more recently.
Yeah.
Um, but yes, for me personally, um, we had a wonderful cafeteria at the college, and I had become a big fan of one of our ladies in there would make wraps, and I would get it loaded up with cheese and lots and lots of vegetables and chicken. And then she made her own chipotle mayo. And I had thankfully recently asked her about how to make the chipotle mayo. So she had described it to me. So when I was working from home, I did attempt to make my own chipotle mayo. Um, Made it a little spicier than what hers was. I think my ratios were slightly off, so I still enjoyed it thoroughly. Um, and sh she would also always toast in a panini press the wrap, which is great because then it holds the wrap together so it doesn't fall apart. So I pulled out of storage in the basement my smaller George Foreman grill that I had from years ago, and I used that to do the panini press of my wraps that I was making for lunch every day. And my very first attempt at that uh it did not turn out the best. I mean, it was still edible, but it was definitely an interesting shape and a little too toasted in some spots. So I did perfect over the coming weeks just the right amount of rolling everything together and pressing it and everything. So I did acquire skills in that respect in making the chipotle mayo.
Yeah, well, and maybe since wraps are inherently a little more healthier than some options, with the George Foreman being, knocking out the fat, maybe it didn't know how to quite fight such a healthy item. So, um,
True.
well, just to be respectful of everyone's time, let's go ahead and just get some wrap up thoughts with this final question here. Um, just thinking about some of the key takeaways that you've had with your relationship with food from the beginning of the pandemic up until now. Um, Thinking about those aspects and any insight that you want to give to anybody else watching tonight, just to kind of wrap us up. Tiff, any final thoughts on those things?
Um, I love food so very much. And I don't love exercising. So since the pandemic up till now, I have gained a lot of weight. I am not unhealthy by any means, but I am the heaviest that I've ever been. And that mentally has been really hard.
Mhm.
Because like I said, I love food, don't like exercising. Um, so that has probably been my biggest challenge, but I am finding ways to look at things differently, not, with like exercising, it's not just exercising, it's not boring. And I found that I like doing it in classes with people that are free at work. I am enjoying now doing more in the kitchen with Alec because I find there's more value with that. And it's not just me sitting down and inhaling my food and then doing something else. So it's been a journey for sure that I'm still learning and growing on. So that's my 2 cents is food is your friend.
Awesome. Melinda, same question to you.
Um, for me, I definitely focused more on trying to eat healthier. And unlike many people who were baking up storms and everything else, I actually found myself losing weight during the pandemic because I was in a healthier place mentally, being able to work from home and going for walks. And I set up an outdoor office on my back patio under a canopy and just being out there in nature, which is my love. And that's what I did for all the years I worked full time at the museum, was outside nature. So ever since then, have just really continued to focus a lot on trying to eat healthy, um, eat smaller portions. That's something that I was working on during the pandemic too. Uh, I still definitely enjoy eating out on occasion. And during the pandemic, I did try to support the places that I loved that were nearby by doing takeout, carry out from some of those. Because I didn't want to see them disappear during the pandemic. And they were local, small, family-owned places. So I still try to work in some of that into what I do, is still try to support those places when I can. And so I feel like really overall how I ate before, during, and after has not changed a huge amount, but just being more aware of how I'm eating and what I'm doing, because it's just me here. So I don't have anyone else to make it fun by cooking with me, or to cook for me or anything like that. So that I did not change as drastically in that respect.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you. And Joe, same question to you.
I actually have a lot more confidence in my cooking
Mhm.
since the pandemic. I feel like I can whip something up pretty well, and it could be balanced and healthy and things like that. Um, One thing that like I did learn and kind of had to unlearn from the pandemic is I know to make restaurant quality stuff, there's a really easy trick to do that, which is add about 3 times the amount of butter you normally would. So I had to, like maybe we don't need to use an entire stick of butter in every recipe that you ever have. It is very delicious, though. I highly recommend it.
We know.
But those are the things that that come to mind, is that like I can usually, if I'm not super tired from work or whatever and my brain is working, I can usually like go and be like, oh, I've got this thing and I've got this thing and I've got this thing, I can make this work in this way. And that's a pretty cool skill to have, I think. And in the pandemic, once we got over like the initial existential dread, there's a little bit of like just kind of living your best life. Like you're just like making bread and growing plants, and like you know what I mean, and like just
Yeah.
surviving and feeding yourself and your family, and that was pretty neat. But yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for sharing your perspectives on this. This is wonderful insight, especially from adults in the community, and lots of educational pursuits and opportunities. So I think that covers all main areas of the class. So I hope to get an A with this. But again, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Give him an A. Give him an A. He did it.
I did not pay him to say that, or at least I didn't pay him enough. But thank you, thank you everybody for joining tonight. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this, and stay safe, stay happy and healthy, and we'll see you next time.